Okay, well, I think we'll begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome out there in the world. Welcome to our Council on Middle East Studies Fall 2021 Colloquium series, which I'm very happy to say features the work of our many talented Yale faculty working in modern Middle East studies. My name is Marcia Inhorn. I'm a professor of anthropology and international affairs at Yale. I'm also the chair of the Council on Middle East Studies, affectionately known as CMES. And I'd first really like to acknowledge the hard work of those who made this colloquium series possible. We have a wonderful group at our Council on Middle East Studies, including our CMES program director, Kristen Siebert, our CMES program administrator, Marwa Khabour. And this year we have two wonderful CMES postdoctoral fellows, Vish Saktaval and Lizzie Burke. And they really helped to bring a very dynamic colloquium series together. And let's just say last year, which was the first year of the pandemic, where visitors couldn't come, there was nothing in person, we decided that a good idea would be to feature the work of our wonderful Yale faculty, who sometimes get neglected because we often invite visitors from other parts of the world to come and speak at Yale. And last year, there were quite a few faculty members who had just published books. And so we decided to have a fall faculty series in which Yale faculty talked about their books, moderated by other Yale faculty. It was very successful. And so this fall, we thought, well, why don't we just keep hearing from Yale faculty? That is what we're going to be doing for this fall in a Zoom webinar format. So we're going to be doing it this way. And some faculty members are going to be talking about their books. We're going to have some book talks, and other faculty members are going to be talking about new research in a sort of standard lecture format. We're going to have more of a lecture format today. And I want to say that at any time during the presentation, if you'd like to pose a question to our speaker, you just need to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. We hope in spring 2022 that we might be back in person, that remains to be seen, but we really like the Zoom webinar format as well because we can reach audiences really all around the world. And so we welcome you from wherever you are into our colloquium series here at Yale. So with that background in mind, I'm really delighted to introduce our inaugural CMES speaker, who is also the newest member of our CMES community here at Yale. She literally just joined us last month from Stanford University, where she obtained her PhD. Her name is Professor Salma Mousa. She's an assistant professor in our Department of Political Science at Yale. She has done her work in the fields of comparative politics and international relations. And originally from Egypt, Professor Mousa is really interested in the ways that social contact between groups who might otherwise be in conflict can actually build social cohesion and increase tolerance, thereby, I would imagine, preventing further conflict from occurring. And very interestingly, she's partnered with a number of governments and NGOs to really explore these questions of social contact and social tolerance in a number of Middle Eastern settings. She's published papers on Muslim-Christian relations, preventing Islamophobia, and on boosting refugees' economic outcomes. And today her focus is on Lebanon, a country that I personally feel great affection for, but as we know is going through a significant crisis moment. She is going to be presenting a very intriguing presentation entitled Co-Producing Public Goods, Experimental Evidence from a Lebanese Recycling Program. And so it's a great pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Professor Salma Mousa, and we welcome you to our Yale community of Middle East Studies. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much for that really kind introduction and really warm welcome. I'm so happy to be part of CMES and also to present this project. This is the first time I've presented it, so all feedback is very much welcome, so don't hold back. So I changed the title a little bit to reflect a bit of a different framing. So I'll be here presenting a project on how to increase citizens' co-production of public goods, where I'll hopefully show you some experimental evidence from a Lebanese recycling program. And this is joint work with Kristen Cow at the University of Gothenburg. And I also want to acknowledge the very generous funding of the Hisham Adawi Foundation to help make this work possible. So let me take you back to the summer of 2015 in Lebanon. The national landfills had reached capacity, and the government failed to put together a contingency plan for what to do after that date. This led to garbage bags and piles of trash snaking through the streets of Beirut, being mass dumped into the sea, which had a really detrimental effect on the coastal ecosystems. As you can imagine, this kind of unregulated trash dumping led to methane emissions increasing, pollutants increasing in the air, in the soil, in the water, which led Human Rights Watch to call the waste crisis a national health crisis. The Lebanese people responded with various social movements, one of which was the You Stink movement, which was targeted to the incompetence of the incumbent government to solve the crisis or to prevent it in the first place. The launch of the Beirut Medinti Party, like a youth-led party aimed at triggering really fundamental political change in Lebanon, and also the Waste Management Coalition, which is a series or a collective of NGOs and other civil society actors who are trying to take matters into their own hand and put together an integrated waste management solution for Lebanon. As you probably know, the Beirut port explosion about a year ago had an incredibly tragic effect in terms of economic and human cost. One additional cost of that explosion was that it damaged waste infrastructure by an additional $25 million. And all of this mismanagement is in spite of the fact that Lebanon, which is a country the size of Connecticut, where we are right now, spends more than 10 times on the waste sector than Jordan or Tunisia. So this is not a question of there's no government funds, there's no capacity. The money is there, the problem is there. It's just that the system is incredibly inefficient. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why the system currently is inefficient and one program that we tested out to try to fix that. So unfortunately, this kind of waste crisis is not relegated to just Lebanon. The vast majority of extracted materials globally are not recycled. Over 90% of waste in low and middle income countries are disposed of in unregulated dumps or they're openly burned. And the current inefficiency of the system is this. People don't sort their trash at source. And sorting at source means you sort your recyclables and your trash and your organics at home. So there's no sorting at source. And at the same time, there are no expensive machines at a sorting facility which will sort your trash for you if you send along the line your mixed or commingled trash. So when people are not sorting at home, and then there's also no machinery to sort later on down the line, there's no system really, no infrastructure for recycling. Everything gets put in these landfills, which is incredibly environmentally unfriendly. It releases these toxic chemicals in the air and the water. Which has all these health repercussions. So here is a picture on the left from my city, Cairo, Egypt. This is Garbage City, as it's known. And just to give you an example of how governments spend a lot of money trying to solve waste management, and it's usually very ineffective. The Egyptian government in the early to mid 2000s contracted, I think, a French or another foreign company to handle the Egyptian trash waste collection system. And it was a dismal failure. And they actually terminated the contract, and Egypt was none the better for it. And in fact, all it had done was really stop the really good work of the Zabbalin, so the workers who live very close to these garbage dumps, who actually upcycle and recycle those things and sell them on the market, which was the only piece of recycling that actually does work. And on the right, you see a picture of waste being burnt openly in a dump in Iraq. And this particular instance led to a lot of residents in this area actually complaining that their children and themselves were suffering from the air pollutants and the air pollution. So this has like pretty serious consequences for people who live in these places, as well as the environment. So this is all very grim, but what Kristen and I did was try to see what existing and grassroots solutions there are for this problem in Lebanon. So we partnered with a local NGO and a local municipality, in this case, Bikfaya in northern Lebanon, to launch a sorting program that does two key things. The first is that it makes your sorting behavior visible. So it's not just that you can throw all your stuff in a trash bag now and people don't know what, there's no consequences to whether or not you sorted properly. Now someone is actually checking your trash. And the other key thing the program does is provide information on how to sort. So if you genuinely don't know how to sort properly, and it can get kind of tricky, it will send you feedback and let you know how to improve your sorting. So it's kind of a bundled program, which we vary experimentally. And then we measure the effect of receiving this program on real world environmentally conscious behaviors. And the main outcome we look at is really people sorting quality. Are people sorting better? And to preview the main results, the program significantly improved sorting quality at least 2 months later. That's when we collected data. And so this program, by the way, is called Nadira. And you can see there in the logo at the bottom, they also partnered with the municipality of Bikfaya in addition to a sorting facility called Biclean. So this seems like maybe a bit of a narrow problem, like getting people to recycle better in Lebanon. But actually, this speaks to really fundamental questions in political science and in social science, which is how can we encourage citizens to become co-producers of public goods? So like many other public goods, you need citizens' active participation for those goods to be maintained at the very least. And in a lot of cases, you need citizens to be engaged for the public good to succeed. So think about a public beach or a public park or even the roads or highways. If people start trashing those places, it ruins the quality, right? You need at a minimum that people pick up after themselves. Think about the public education system. So study after study shows that when parents are engaged, they're voting on school board decisions, they're engaged with teachers, that improves learning outcomes and school quality outcomes. So we need to kind of move away from this framework of citizens as being passive consumers and toward a framework where citizens actually need to participate in public goods provision. And the environment is also a classic collective action problem. And to solve collective action problems, you need a combination of strong formal and informal institutions. So in this case, the formal institution would be a sorting plant or a sorting facility, and the informal would be things like strong social norms to get people to sort. This is also, and maybe most concretely, an example of a compliance challenge. So governments all the time need to get citizens to comply with various regulations. Filling in their taxes, for example, is a classic example. But to boost compliance among citizens, so in this case, compliance with an existing sorting program, there's a few different things you can do to dial up people's compliance. One is that you need the government itself to be trustworthy. So people need to trust that what they're doing is effective and the government will do its job if I do my job. And what Margaret Levy calls ethical reciprocity of other citizens. So for me to take on an individual action that's very costly, like sorting at my house, I need to be convinced that other citizens and my neighbors are going to be doing the same thing so that we can all have an impact. So I need to trust the government and I need to trust people around me. Another thing we can do to increase compliance is to increase the enforcement of social norms. So if people expect that I'm going to be criticized for not following a social norm, they're more likely to comply. This is also the case when it comes to public visibility of behavior. So the more that a behavior around following a norm or complying with a norm is public, the more leverage you have to get people to comply. And when you combine these things, anticipated enforcement and the public visibility of behavior, you get social pressure. So social pressure is a really powerful tool that governments have and really that any organization has to get people to comply with regulations. The classic example of this is the Gerber Green and Larimer paper on encouraging people in the US to vote, to sign up to vote. And they found that when you tell people, hey, whether or not you vote is public information, which is true, and that we will tell your neighbors that you don't vote, combining those two things increases vote turnout in a very dramatic way. So there's an insight here that social pressure is a tool that can be used to increase compliance. So how does our particular program reflect these insights that I just talked about? So to talk a little bit about Nadira, they're a grassroots Lebanese NGO that focus on waste mismanagement in the Arab world. They have a few different sites within Lebanon and they're expanding to other countries as well. They partner with municipalities to roll out this program among residents. And this is the program. So you give people a roll of QR code stickers. They put those stickers on their trash bags. The trash bag gets collected as usual by the garbage truck. The garbage truck takes it to the sorting facility. An inspector at the facility will then scan the QR code. Then they will open your bag and see how well you sorted your trash and give you a rating, 1 to 5 stars. And then they'll describe any mistakes that you made. So you can see here in the screenshot, describe the contamination. You put in disposable plastics, beverage cartons. So you kind of pick the category of the mistake and then you can provide other feedback as well. And you take a picture of the photo to verify to the user in case they're interested that that was actually their bag. So here's the social pressure part. Here's where we're de-anonymizing trash collection. What you put in your bag now is no longer just like an anonymous process where you can get away with anything. Someone, at least one person, is going to know how well you sorted your trash. And then people get feedback messages via the app that they install to correct their mistakes. So we don't just say these are the mistakes you made, we actually tell you how to correct these mistakes in the future. And so this is something that's kind of missing in the current literature on compliance, is people genuinely not knowing how to comply. And especially with something like sorting culture or norms in the Middle East, we're really starting from scratch a lot of the time. So you can't really assume that people know how to sort. So a little bit about the context of where we launched this. So the city of Bikfaya in Lebanon has about 5,000 residents. It varies seasonally. It's a relatively wealthy, relatively well-run municipality. It's predominantly Christian, although there's a lot of different denominations. The mayor, Nicole Jmail, is from a very prominent and popular political dynasty. Her brothers were very famous politicians. One of her brothers was assassinated and is kind of viewed as a martyr. Her other brother is a parliamentarian and the head of the party that she belongs to. And so the municipality of Bikfaya partnered with Nadira to improve sorting in the town for various economic, social, and political reasons. So I can't speak exactly to the mayor's motivations, but economically speaking, the reason why they invested in this sorting plant is because they want to sell those recyclables onto third parties and to produce fertilizer and compost. In terms of from the social perspective, it's just a public good to keep the town clean and to keep people happy with how the town is being run. And politically speaking, her party and her platform really centers on having a green reputation. It's a very important part of her political identity and the party's political identity. So you can see here in the bottom right, this is actually a picture from Bikfaya from a couple of Christmases ago, where the presents under the tree are made from recycled aluminum cans, and the tree itself is made from recycled bottles. So this is a really big part of the town's identity. So the municipality built this sorting facility on the left, Be Clean, which processes about 6 tons of waste per day. And it's generally pretty effective. Like when we fielded our baseline survey, nearly every single person in the baseline survey said that they were very happy or very satisfied with the town's waste management program. So you have this really strong, you have the formal institutions are there. And the civic duty is there. Like people strongly believe that this is a civic duty and the norm is there. At the same time, so that's a big advantage of Bikfaya. At the same time, Bikfaya is not immune to all the other economic crises that are going on in Lebanon that Marcia alluded to, hyperinflation, devaluation of the currency, fuel crisis. So Bikfaya is kind of a charming, enclave in the middle of all this, but they're really not immune from what's happening in the rest of the country as well. So who are the people who live in Bikfaya? So here are some results from our baseline survey of just around 650 people. So the median resident is 41 to 60 years old. They are university educated. They live in a house of 4 people, and they've lived in Bikfaya for essentially their whole life. In terms of the social capital, 2/3 say that they know nearly everyone in Bikfaya, and those social ties are also very dense. They're strong ties. So 71% say that they could rely on someone else in the town to help them, and in this case, it was help them transport a sofa that they needed to dispose of. In terms of their norms around sorting behavior, 44% would say that their neighbor would criticize them if they found out that they weren't sorting. And nearly everyone believes that sorting is a civic duty. However, we do see this really big gap between the perceived and actual sorting quality. So the average residents rate themselves. They say that they sort the quality of their sorting is 4.1 out of 5, but in reality, when we actually inspect the bags, it's 2.8 out of 5. And their sorting knowledge is really low. So they only correctly answer questions about how to sort like a milk carton or flour wrappings or like aluminum foil. They only correctly answer those questions 35% of the time. So there's a strong culture, but the actual implementation and knowledge is very low. So moving on to the research design. So our goal is to improve sorting quality among residents of Bikfaya. We have other behaviors we're interested in as well, but this is really the key outcome, and it's the one that I'm going to present today. The sample consists of the entire city, which is about 1,000 households. The randomization happened at the neighborhood level. So it's a cluster randomized design. And there are 38 neighborhoods in Bikfaya. And so some of them were treated, some of them were not. We conducted a block randomization to make sure that the treatment and control pairs were very similar on key baseline dimensions. So the key dimensions that we wanted to get balance on, one was region. So here you can see a map of Bikfaya. There's a big main road that cuts through Bikfaya. So we wanted to get balance on whether they belong to upper or lower Bikfaya, on the neighborhood size, so small, medium, or large, and the baseline sorting quality. So this is our main outcome. And so we wanted to make sure that we have similar sorting quality among the treatment and control pairs. And the treatment itself is an encouragement design. So we don't know the effect of, this specific program or people who comply with it. We only know the effect of inviting people or encouraging people to sign up. In this case, we just left a box on their doorstep and confirmed that someone received the box. And within the box had the role of QR code stickers and instructions on how to install the app. So the key outcomes here are mainly behavioral. And we have 3 key outcomes. The first and the most important is sorting quality. So this is when the bag arrives at the facility and the inspector inspects it, what is the rating? How well have they actually sorted their trash? And this is a 1 to 5 star rating that's rated by inspectors who don't know the treatment condition of the bags that are coming in. So all the QR code stickers look the same. And we measure this 2 months after the intervention starts. The second behavior looks at environmentally conscious behaviors outside of sorting. So it's great if this program can improve sorting quality, but can it affect these other civic behaviors outside of sorting quality to actually make people more change their environmentally friendly behaviors outside of sorting? So the second is whether people volunteer to join an environmental initiative 2 to 3 months after the intervention. And we measure this using the N-line survey. So we ask respondents, would you be willing to sign up to volunteer for a local environmental initiative? We don't mention Nadira or any name of a specific initiative. And then we say, if you say yes, you will be contacted by a representative of this kind of organization. So it's still pretty costly, even though it's survey-based. And lastly, we set up a raffle across the entire city. And actually it's ongoing. I think today's the last day to enter the raffle. For people to win green prizes. So these prizes are only like environmentally friendly prizes. There's not much of a reason to sign up for this raffle unless you wanted something that specifically would improve the environment. So here are the prizes. One is a set of 3 sorting bins, so the organic, recyclables, and other. This is, something we take for granted in the US. Like the current market value of a set of bins like this in Lebanon is somewhere between $100 and $200. So it's really not trivial. Just given the devaluation of the currency. Rechargeable batteries, trash picker-upper, and a reusable water bottle. Of course, you're going to get people who want to sign up for a raffle because they want free things, but the portion of those people who just want free things should still be the same between treatment and control. So in case you're wondering how we actually measure sorting quality for people in the control group, so people in the treatment group get the stickers, they slap them on their bag, we get to inspect them. But what about people in the control group? What about people in the treatment group who don't want to use the stickers, who don't comply with the program? So how we measure this is, and this is how we measured the baseline data as well before the program launched, before anyone got stickers, is we worked with the garbage truck drivers, and we had members of our research team and from the sorting facility would accompany them on the route. And we would take a random sample of bags from each waste type, so organics, residual, and recyclables. And then we put our own stickers on them, and we know which stickers correspond to which neighborhood, so we know where the bag came from when it was picked up. And then we scan them at the facility. So this is our method for inspecting bags that come from anyone except people in the treatment group who use their stickers, so people who are not using stickers. So now I'm going to dive into the results. So here on the x-axis, you can see the number of weeks before the intervention launched. So this is the baseline. So this is 3 weeks. We measured baseline data 3 weeks before the intervention. So that's, minus 2 weeks, minus 1 week, and then 0 weeks before. So we have 3 data points there. And then we kind of fast forward a little bit to put the post-treatment period where we measure the outcome 2 months after the intervention starts. And on the y-axis, we have the mean rating, which is like the number of stars from 1 to 5. Here, I've just shortened the axis so you can see it more clearly. And so treatment, you can see in green, and the black line represents the control group. So what you can see is before the intervention, we have parallel trends, like they track very, very closely before the intervention. After the intervention, they're still trending in the same direction, but we see like a much bigger boost to the treatment group. And so these are just raw means, by the way, so I haven't like adjusted this for any covariates, this is just the raw data. So we see that the average rating 2 months after the intervention for the control group is about 2.7-ish. The average rating for the treatment group is about 3.3. We can also look at the data in a slightly different way. So instead of taking the star rating as a continuous measure, we can bin it and make it a binary variable. And so we can look at just the number of 5-star ratings. So the distribution in general of the ratings is very bimodal. You have a lot of 1 stars and a lot of 5 stars. And so when we look at the average rate of getting a 5-star rating, so on the left, on the y-axis, you can see this is like the portion of people who get 5 stars. And again, we have pretty similar parallel trends before the treatment. After the intervention, we see that the treatment group is about 10 percentage points more likely to get a 5-star rating than the control group. And now I'm going to flip it to look at the most negative outcome, which is getting a 1-star rating. So again, on the y-axis, we see the portion of people who get a 1-star rating. Again, the 2 groups track very closely beforehand. And then when we zoom or fast forward to 2 months afterwards, we see this drop of, again, about 10 percentage points in 1-star ratings among the treatment group relative to the control group. These results are pretty similar when we put the data into more of a parametric framework. So when we add some controls for who the inspector is, so the inspector ID, the day of the week, the waste type, so organic, recyclable, other, the randomization block, which is important. And then we cluster standard errors at the neighborhood level, which is the level that the randomization happens at. So here we end up with this intent to treat effect. So kind of the average effect of just leaving the box, because we can't go into who complies and who doesn't comply. We just want to know the effect from a policy perspective of inviting someone to join, because that's all we can control. So the average effect of inviting people to join is a 0.3 out of 5-star increase in sorting quality averaged across all of the 3 waste types. And this is actually driven by the treatment effect in the organics specifically. So the treatment effect on your sorting quality of organics, if you're in the treatment group, it increases by an average of 0.5 out of 5 stars, so half a star rating. And also the residuals or other category, where we see an increase of 0.2 stars. In terms of compliance, so from everyone who we invited, about half of them did not use the program at all. From the other half, a quarter used a combination of QR codes and the app, and the other quarter used the QR codes only. So there they would be only getting social pressure and none of the feedback, and the other quarter would be getting both. So we see that there is this effect. And so what is driving this effect? How was this program actually able to improve sorting quality? So here's where our survey analysis comes in, where we have a baseline and an end line survey, where we can look at treatment effects, or this intent to treat effect, on 4 key mechanisms that were in that first slide that I showed you about all the factors that influence compliance. So the first is social pressure. So the feeling monitored and feeling that people would know if you don't sort your trash properly. So the baseline level of this was 54% of people felt that they were being monitored. So how does that increase based on treatment status? The second mechanism is norm enforcement. So do you feel like your neighbors or others in Bikfaya would criticize you if you did not sort your trash? The third is, this is Margaret Levy's idea of ethical reciprocity. So has this program changed your perception of how often other people in your town sort, which then makes it more rational for you to sort, because you think, okay, if everyone's doing it, we can have a bigger impact together. If I'm just one person, the impact is not enough to justify the individual cost for me sorting my trash. And so a baseline, the average respondent said that they thought 64% of people in Bikfaya sort their trash. So it's going to be interesting to see if the treatment effect actually increases people's perception of what others are doing. And the last mechanism is knowledge. So it could be that people genuinely don't know how to sort. I mean, at baseline, we had very low rates of people getting the correct answer. So the program could feasibly improve people's knowledge as well. And that could be the route through which we achieve these treatment effects. So I want to linger a little bit on another mechanism which I didn't talk about. So on the very first slide, one of the main drivers of compliance is trusting that the government will do its job, that everything's not just going to go in one dump at the end of the day. And so here I took a snippet from a blog, a Lebanese blogger who actually covered Bikfaya and covered their environmental program. And here he's talking about getting people to sort at home. And this is what he writes. This is the first major step Bikleen pulled off. That's the sorting plant. We constantly hear that Lebanese people will never sort in their home, but many municipalities prove that that's just talk. And people will commit to sorting if they know they won't be thrown into the same truck like so many cities and towns unfortunately did. Now, I think this is an important part of the story. I think this is a necessary but insufficient condition. Like, you need to have trust in the government, but it's not enough. And how do we know it's not enough? Well, because in Bikfaya, 97% of people at baseline trusted that the government did its job when it comes to waste sorting, but their actual waste sorting was very low. So this is a necessary but insufficient condition. And even in places where people do trust the government, there's still a lot of room for improvement that you can unlock through this combination of social pressure and knowledge. So what are the economic and environmental impacts? So we found that this treatment effect, that people are producing cleaner organics as a result of this program, being invited to this program. What does that mean from an economic perspective? So first, it means less compost in the landfills. So now people are sorting organics better. So when organics arrive at the facility, they're arriving cleaner. When we have cleaner organics, we have less compost that's sitting in dumps, right? Because people have sorted it properly. This leads to fewer pollutants, especially methane in the air and soil. This means that there's less compost sitting around in the sorting plant waiting to be sorted. There's more clean organics to feed hogs and to create fertilizer, which is the main thing that this plant does with them. It lowers the operating costs of the plant because you don't need to hire people for as many hours to sort through the trash if the trash is coming in already better sorted. And in terms of, this treatment effect we found on the residuals categories, people are sorting residuals better. Things like hazardous products like syringes, for example, like anecdotally, the workers at the plant were saying, oh, we've noticed a drop in these kind of dangerous materials, which would harm the workers and would lead to some accidents at the plant because they're not put in the correct bag. So what do these results tell us about what we can learn in other parts of Lebanon or other parts of the Middle East or other countries? So Bikfaya is very special in a lot of ways. One is that people have very, very high trust in their local government, strong party identity, and we don't really see a lot of sectarian capture. Like, this is a government that serves everyone. This municipality serves everyone who lives there. It's pretty well functioning. And people in Bikfaya have really high intrinsic motivation. So almost everyone thinks that sorting is the right thing to do and they believe in it. At the same time, you have the strong formal institutions in place. You already have the sorting plant. The municipality has already paid, however many, tens of thousands of dollars, not a huge amount, but still an amount to invest to create that sorting plant and to hire people to work there. So this is all suggesting that Bikfaya is maybe a very particular case and you won't find these effects elsewhere. At the same time, we still see very low actual sorting quality, despite these strong informal and formal institutions. We see very low actual sorting knowledge, so people don't really know what to do. And at the same time, Bikfaya was not immune to all these national crises that were happening. You can see here a picture of the fuel lines for people trying to get petrol, so they're affected by the fuel shortages. So the environment is not very top of mind in Lebanon. It has not been very top of mind this summer. So the fact that we still find an effect, given that the program is just an encouragement to sign up, and given that there were these other crises going on, suggests that this program actually could be something powerful that we could take to other places as well. So to wrap up, so how should we update about the world based on these results? So this evidence shows that making norm compliant behaviors visible, really removing the anonymity from these norm compliant behaviors, and at the same time giving people knowledge on how to comply, increases citizen cooperation. And a really interesting aspect of this, I think, is that the use of technology, which wasn't really a feature in the compliance or public goods literature in the 90s and early 2000s, is now a way that you can actually enforce some tracking and some monitoring and some feedback loops and create that social pressure. Unlike other recycling studies that manipulate social pressure, and there's one famous study, Schultz 1999, where they find that telling people that we're going to look through your trash and check how well you sorted, telling people that did increase the volume of recyclables and how often people recycle, but it didn't improve the actual recycling quality. So which is what we were able to find here, which suggests that you might need to actually invest in teaching people how to sort. And you can't take for granted that everyone knows how to do this. And so hopefully when the survey data comes in, we can actually look at the, test these things against each other, like how important is knowledge versus social pressure. But for now, it seems like they come as a bundle, and both have, we have good reason to think that both of them are important. And so zooming out a little bit, hopefully this shows a promising path forward for encouraging citizens in the Arab world and other developing low trust societies for how to become co-producers of public goods. And I was really fascinated by this literature on pockets of efficiency. So even in places where you have low trust in government, low interpersonal trust, and remember, those are two key things for people to engage in these pro-social behaviors. Even in those kinds of societies, you still get these pockets of efficiency where the formal institutions are there and the norms are there, but people don't comply. So a good example of this from my country, from Egypt, for example, public libraries. People strongly think libraries are an important thing, and providing books is an important thing. There's a strong norm, but libraries don't lend books. You actually can't borrow books from most libraries in Egypt because people don't return them. So there's no compliance. Another example is monuments and like historic ancient artifacts in Egypt. This is a pocket of efficiency. There's strong formal institutions to preserve these artifacts. There's strong norms where people believe that they should be protected. At the same time, there's high non-compliance where people still degrade these sites and they climb up the pyramids and take pictures when they're not supposed to. So hopefully this evidence points to like some situations where even when you have low trust in government, low interpersonal trust, where you have, for whatever historical accident, the government actually cares about providing a certain public good, and people do have a strong norm to believe that that good is important, that increasing social pressure and potentially knowledge can be a way to encourage people's compliance. So I'll wrap up there, and I'm really interested to hear everybody's questions. So thank you for listening. I'll maybe leave the slide up for a minute or so for people to digest. And thank you in advance.
So Salma, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, it's Marcia. That was fascinating in so many different ways, especially thinking of myself, and have I ever been taught about recycling and sorting? Really, no. I mean, education on these kinds of environmental issues really needs to be spread far and wide, right? I'm just very curious. I'm going to ask the first question, and then there are 4 questions waiting for you in the Q&A. But this is a great example of how an efficient local government did something to get its citizens invested and to try to comply to make it a greener place in Lebanon, which is a disparate society with a lot of fragmentation. How do these municipalities link, if you will, to a more national kind of civic, to the government, for example? How do you replicate and tie the little city, the little town, to something larger? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm just taking notes on my computer, so that's what I'm doing.
Especially because it could be that, this is just a particularly well-run and efficient and fairly homogeneous town in, the hills of Lebanon. But, how does it connect? And maybe how does this program then sort of expand to a larger sort of, polis, if you will?
So I think the way to do this, if I'm just going to speculate, would be to keep it at the local level. And I think what Nadira is doing is right, which is to partner with municipalities, not the national government. And, given the importance of trust that the government will do the right thing, and the importance of interpersonal trust, that you trust that your neighbors will do the right thing, that those 2 types of trust are much higher at the local level, typically, like in your town, maybe even in your neighborhood. So I think you'll actually lose the beauty of this kind of program the more that you scale it up to the national government, because trust in the national government in Lebanon is absolute rock bottom. So no one is going to actually believe that the trash is going to go to the right place in the end. And they won't necessarily believe that the people around them are going to do the right thing either, if they're living in these big urban areas that are very heterogeneous, and the social ties, as whereas with any big city is much lower. Then you, of course, you have like the sectarian fragmentation overlaid on top of that. So I think that this kind of program really should stay local. They have actually launched it in Beirut now, and that system is a little bit different because you have so many apartment buildings where you don't get the same trash collection system. So what they're doing instead is having like a drop-off point where people can come and bring their sorted bags, and when the bag is gets like a 4-star rating or above, so it's well sorted, they get coupons for local businesses. So they use a totally different approach in these less economically developed, like built up urban environments where you can't really have a trash collection route, but at the same time, you want to incentivize people to sort. And so there, you're taking out the element of trust entirely because you're just giving people a financial incentive. So in those places where you're really like trust is so low between people and toward the government, that's the other strategy, right? Is to literally pay people to sort their trash better. And this is, these are two different strategies. And the third would be taxing people, like on, to punish them if they don't sort it better. And that's really the one that the municipality in Bikfaya wants to avoid, and that lots of governments want to avoid, a waste collection tax, for example, because it's just very unpopular. So if you can leverage social norms and social pressure, or incentivize people by giving them money for doing something correctly, those are probably the two tools you want to take advantage of before instituting a tax, especially in like a place that is dealing with so many crises like Lebanon.
Okay, well, go ahead. You can see the Q&A and just take questions as you'd like that.
Oh, I see. Wait, can I see the Q&A?
Can you see them on your screen? You have 4 questions, quite some long ones, from Nicholas Lotito. Can you see them?
Otherwise, on the bottom, if you can hit, there's a thing that says Q&A.
Oh, sorry, I was looking in the chat. Okay.
That's okay.
Q&A.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Nicholas says, I'd like to push back on the title. Could you explain? Yeah, I changed the title. Could you explain the trap of uncivic societies? What is an uncivic society? Do you interpret low knowledge of recycling practices as an indicator of low civic values? I'm still playing around with the framing, and I'm really curious what people think is the best literature to place this in. But my thinking with the original title is, people feel very strongly that sorting is a civic duty. So they have the civic value, but they don't have the behavior. So how can we get certain communities off of this path of low civic behaviors, low pro-social behaviors like sorting, and put them onto a better path where their behaviors actually catch up to what their values are? So I don't think that the knowledge is an indicator, but definitely, people already have the value. They think it's a civic duty. But yeah, I'm definitely still playing around with the framing here. Nicholas says, is the program of recycling continuing in Lebanon, specifically during the pandemic and the challenging economic situation? If you complete the experiment again today, do you anticipate getting the same results? Well, Nicholas, this program did literally just finish like a couple of weeks ago. So we actually, this was ongoing throughout the worst of the crises this summer. And in fact, the raffle ends today. So that's why I didn't show you results from the survey or the raffle, because that data collection is ending now. And the waste sorting, I think the last time we collected that data was in August, so very recently. It's tough from a researcher perspective to run studies, especially on something that is very low salience, like the environment during this kind of time. But at the same time, I think it makes the results stronger to say, even when people have much bigger worries, they're still complying, and the program can still have an effect. So I think that gives us some hope about how much these results can travel to easier settings. Kayla said, you've touched on this a bit, but I'd like you to speak more to this in regards to the focus on compliance. Is there a significant portion of people who think that sorting is meaningful and who do not believe that sorting is meaningful? And how meaningful is it really? I have been told that, at least in the US, recycling is fairly meaningless, given that most of them have been shipped to foreign countries, are a significant percentage of plastics produced from recycled plastics. Yeah, that's a great question, Kayla. So first, I think 97 or 98% believed that sorting was effective. So they believed, and then the exact wording was, I believe the sorting is effective, and then in parentheses, I know if I sort, my recyclables will go to the right place in the end. So people do think that it will be disposed of correctly. Now there's another question, which is, even if everyone does their job and sorts perfectly, from a systems level, is this actually going to have an impact? And so here's where I spoke with the kind of environmental specialists on the project and who work at Nadira. And so one is there is a market for high grade plastics, not necessarily low grade plastics like what you get your takeout food in, but high grade plastics like milk jugs, for example, milk cartons. Those can be reused. They don't cause any leaking of chemicals. So there are some plastics where if people recycle them better, there's a clear market for them. And that's what Be Clean does. They said their economic model is that they sell these plastics onto secondary markets. And then from the side of organics, when people are sorting their organics better, that clean organic material gets composted. That compost they make into liquid fertilizer, they give to the farmers in the area, and then they give the actual remaining bulky content it becomes hog feed. So those are the two ways that the factory basically self-sustains, and it's mainly on trying to get the sorting to come in cleaner. That way they can sell on these plastics. And so you do need a market for these plastics, but there is a big global market for clean plastics. And unfortunately in the US, the plastics are so commingled that, the contracts with China and other countries, they just canceled them because they're like, we don't need your crappy recycled stuff now because you don't sort properly, and it's not worth it for us anymore to pay people to sort it for you. So I think the commingled rate that China deems acceptable is like 1% or 0.5%. In the US, it's something like 25 to 30% of recyclables are commingled. So there is, I think, an economic logic to reducing the level of contamination. Okay, Nancy says, oh, I like Nancy's giving me a nice personal story. I'm a Yale alumna, Italian American, who moved from Boston to Lebanon 9 years ago for family reasons. I now teach at the medical school here. Welcome, Nancy. As you know, it feels as if our beloved country is imploding and there is almost no faith in or accountability to a central government. So it makes great sense to work with municipalities. As you mentioned, Bikfaya is a wealthy community on one extreme of the spectrum. So in many places where people are just trying to survive, especially now, and may not care or be aware of recycling, do you think this model can work on a large scale? Likewise, if municipal leaders do not see potential political gain, do we have hope from implementing it? Yeah, very good questions. So as I mentioned in response to Marcia, so Nadira is actually adjusting the model a little bit for those places where people are just trying to survive, where they're really dialing up the financial incentive. So I will give you vouchers for like restaurants or supermarkets for your clean recyclables. So in those places where it doesn't make sense to rely on like trust in institutions, and norms necessarily, or social pressure, and the financial incentive is going to be the biggest driver. I think it does make sense to tailor the model to that situation. And there is a way you can make these markets all like interdependent. So if people are bringing in their milk jugs and they're clean, I mean, there's a reason why you have thousands of people all across the Middle East, probably millions worldwide, whose entire livelihood is sorting trash and then reselling it, right? Because it's possible to do it. The valuable plastics are there. You just need to make an effort to separate them properly. So I think that model could work in those contexts. If municipal political leaders don't see a potential, are we going to have any hope of implementing it? You need political will for anything to happen in Lebanon. And a lot of, just like here, a lot of things that shouldn't be political are political. So I can't speak to, how difficult it would be to implement in other places. I will say that Nadira is expanding to Beirut right now and to 9 other towns in northern Lebanon. In those other towns, you had various levels of political will, but ultimately people signed off on it because there is like an economic logic behind it. So I think that the more that the economic side makes sense for them, that they think, okay, we can actually resell these cleaner plastics, you don't have to rely so much on the political will. Kaveh says, do you think your research can be adapted to address vaccine hesitancy? That's a big question. I mean, let's think through it together. So when we're thinking about like a public good, like public health, so this is definitely considered under the category of a public good, same with the environment. So you want people to comply with something. And so we know that compliance requires like high trust so in this case, trust in the institutions would be trust that that the medical institutions and the experts who are supposed to approve this and say it's safe, that they know how to do their jobs, and that everyone around me will be vaccinated as well. So those are the two key parts. And the social pressure is, oh, will I be shamed? And will people know if I haven't been vaccinated? So if we were to take that framework and apply it to vaccines, so there are probably some interventions we could do to increase people's trust that that these vaccines have been properly vetted. Maybe we don't rely on trust in national medical institutions. We rely on like people's high esteem of international medical institutions instead. Then we have to convince them that others are getting vaccinated too, and that's hard to do. And then lastly, you have to convince, maybe the social pressure part is the part to dial up. So is there a norm that people should do something that is take a small individual cost to help others? And so if the more we see these policies implemented, like you can't get on a plane unless you're vaccinated, you can't come to school unless you're vaccinated, you are creating that shaming environment. And I don't want to necessarily propose we start shaming people, but the more that you make these behaviors visible, the more likely you are to get compliance. Dan says, it seems from some of the results that there were spillover effects in untreated neighborhoods. Given how small Bikfaya is and how well connected people are, so they talk a lot to each other, how do we know that untreated neighborhoods did not alter their behavior in response to the intervention? Yeah, they probably did. I think there's like a small, it's not very robust, but there is a small effect even on the control neighborhoods. They also, or not effect, but they increased in their sorting quality. I think it's exactly what you said. I mean, they saw this program was being implemented, the mayor's talking about it on social media, and so it was a little bit more top of mind for them. So they start taking an extra second when they sort their trash. I think what's the important thing about this is this would bias against me finding a result, right? Because the control group is doing better as well. So the difference between them is smaller. So for me, like the spillover, it's not a problem from an inference perspective. If anything, it means that if we were to take this to another area where people are not so closely tight-knit, you would probably see more of a stable trend among the control group and a bigger effect among the treatment group. Antonius says, given that Bikfaya is an exceptional area and that most Lebanese have much bigger worries than trash sorting, do you think that a program like this could succeed in a lower income area, more heterogeneous area where people suffer from poor infrastructure? Yeah, so I'm not sure if you heard my response earlier, Antonius, to a previous question, but I think in those areas where you have people are more economically, it's more of like a survival mode. Where you can't necessarily rely on social norms to get things like compliance. This kind of model where you essentially pay people to give you at a drop-off point their goods that are already sorted. And so if they get a 5-star rating, then they can get like a coupon for a supermarket or something. Like this kind of system, I think would work very well, where you take social trust and social norms and social pressure totally out of the equation. The one actually difficult thing with that model is that you have these trash pickers who are, often Syrian refugees. Their job is to go through people's trash and to find the high value plastics and other metals and resell it and recycle it themselves. So this kind of model might actually put those people out of the job. I think that's actually an unintended consequence of spreading into these kinds of areas that I think a lot of people are still thinking through how to address that. Michael says Bikfaya is highly educated, high income. It's very homogenous in terms of religious identity and political identity. Is this possible in municipalities that are on the lower end of a spectrum in a country where funding of municipalities from the government is very low? Yeah, so again, I think the real sustainability of this program, where you don't need to rely on political will and a high capacity municipality, it's going to come when we start seeing that these increased sorting quality rates are translating into more high value plastics and high value recyclables that can then be resold. So I feel like that is the thing that's going to save this program, is when it reaches a point where it's self-sustaining. At the same time, the municipality of Bikfaya is still subsidizing this sorting plant. I think sometimes they break even, sometimes they're at a loss. So it's really you probably do still need the external funds, and actually a donor had built this plant. So the plant itself is actually cheap to build. It's maybe $60,000 to build. So it's something that international donors could invest in. So you can get around not relying on the central government. But it does take time for this model economically to start making sense. And you need a little bit of upfront investment and a little bit of political will to get it going. It's not much, it's still relatively cheap, but I'd say that that is probably like a scope condition for this kind of thing to work, is you do need the municipal approval and you do need a sorting plant. One positive thing, though, is that the same sorting plant can actually service several municipalities. So the Be Clean facility services several towns, not just Bikfaya. That's why they process 6 tons a day. It's not just coming from Bikfaya. So you don't necessarily need like a one-to-one of sorting plants or programs to municipalities.
I believe that was the last question. Can I just ask you, is the Big Clean program, operating in a widely in Lebanon at this point? I mean, can you talk a little bit about just the national level in terms of efforts to do recycling?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how many other plants there are. There are definitely several plants. Be Clean is the only one, it's the one in this area that has a reach of maybe 9 towns or so. There are other sorting plants that are not, Be Clean is it's just a one thing, but there's several others across the country as well. There's also other environmental initiatives. So there's like Recycle Lebanon. And if you look at the Waste Management Coalition, there's a few different programs that all have like a kind of different angle on what they think the solution is to the waste crisis. But ultimately the goal is to have one integrated waste management process. So where people sorting and what happens at the plant is all connected. It's not just like a one-way outpouring of trash. So I mean, Nadira is expanding now in Beirut. They're in a couple of other cities in Lebanon. They also, I think, just launched in the UAE as well. So we have a few different models, and I guess time will tell, which model gets the most traction. But these sorting plants for sure are around Beirut and around Lebanon. They're all kind of independent so far as I understand.
Well, thank you. This is really a little bit of an uplifting story, I have to say, because much of the news coming out of Lebanon hasn't been so uplifting, especially, this past period. So I really appreciate that. It was a fascinating study, and thank you for sharing it. Thank you for coming to Yale and being with us. We're really happy to have you here in our Department of Political Science and in our community of Middle East Studies scholars. So thank you so much. And I should mention that we're going back to a schedule of Thursdays, usually at noon. And our next speaker is Professor Jill Jarvis from French, and she's going to be talking about her new book on Thursday, September 30th at noon. So thank you, everybody, for joining us and for the excellent questions. And I think with that, we will end our first CMES colloquium.
Thank you all so much. Super thoughtful questions. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.